Alright, hello everyone, and this is John from Nickathan Gaming, and I recently completed a few assets for my Match 3 game, which I will add in a link. Now, I wanted to go over the creation of these assets and maybe how you can do it too, because of course there are websites like Icons 8 and many others that will give you icons for free, but the usage of them is very blurred. You know, some of them say that they are commercial, some say commercial single use, some say they are commercial but you need to link their name, and some just don't say anything at all. And at the end of the day, the safest thing is to just create something on your own. Now, I will be doing everything today in Photoshop. However, there are also many other great Photoshop alternatives, like Gimp right here is an open source, so it is free to use, and it's the best Photoshop alternative that I know of. The icons that we will be making will be fairly large, but I do know of another pixel editor called PyxelEdit, P-Y-X-E-L edit, and I like to use that one a lot if I'm working with small pixels. And so here it is at PyxelEdit.com. I've used them a lot, especially when I'm creating game maps like this. It's a bit easier to handle than Photoshop, just because Photoshop tends to have a bleed that can be annoying to turn off. But without further ado, let's get onto making some icons. Now, the first icon that we'll make is the most basic, the cross for closing a game, like we see up here. There are many different ways that you can make this, but I'm just going to go with, we'll make two crosses, and I'll let you choose which one you want. So now the first thing that I will do is I'll go to File and then New to open a new file so I can actually start drawing. Then I want to change it to pixels. Now, data stored on the computer, as many of you may know, or maybe you're learning it for the first time, is stored in bytes or bits of data. And that kind of goes in forms of multiplied by 2. So you have 1 bit which stores 1 thing of data, 2 bits which can store 2 things of data, 3 bits can store 4, then 8, then 16, then 32, and a byte would be 8 of these, so it can store up to 256. Now the ASCII code uses 1 byte of data, the ASCII 11 I think, which is 256 characters, and that's why you can type the alt codes like the Control Alt and then 55 to get a special symbol. And when I create a pixel game, I would usually do something like 32 bits for my levels, or I have my little drawing over here, and I think this is about 100 by 20. I just used the paper that I had available, so of course it's not to a standardized size. But I do like to create things in standardized sizes. So today I'll be using 512 by 512. If that's too big for you, feel free to do 256 or 32. The only difference is when you use these smaller sizes, you will see a little bit of pixelation. and also depending on the size of what you have it on screen. If you have something taking up this much of the screen, then of course you're going to see pixelation. But if you have something taking up this much of the screen, or this much, then pixelation doesn't really matter. At that point, it's too small to see the pixels anyways. But yeah, we'll be doing 512. Feel free to do 2048, 1024. Up to you. All of that can still follow along. So I'll put in 512 pixels by 512 pixels. It has a PPI, or a pixels per inch, which is the resolution. I like to just keep it at 300. I'm also going to keep my color mode as the base RGB with 8 bits, but I'm going to change the background color to transparent. You can get there by choosing white. It just takes one extra step. So don't follow along with this step. I will just show you how to get to a transparent background from one with white. And I'm not going to change the advanced options because I do like my square pixels, and I don't need a special color type. Okay, so this is the one you shouldn't follow along with. It creates a white one. Let me readjust some of my tabs. I want to close the libraries and open my layers. Okay, so now we see I have the white background. I'm going to need to click to unlock, and then that's just about it. Now I can have a transparent background like this. Another thing that I could do is create a new layer, and then once I unlock layer 0, I can just delete layer 0. Now that's how you can deal with white. But let me actually just go back, and I will start with transparent like I said I would. I'll just close that down. Okay. And let me move my face right here so I can still see all of the important layer information, and even right here. Okay. Now the first thing that we want to do is we want to make a cross or an X. So to name it, I just double clicked it and then typed in, and to submit I pressed enter, or the submit button. Now we know that we have 512 by 512, so we know the height and the width of this square that we have. That's why I like to do things in pixels more than inches or centimeters, just because it's easier to edit things. Now I want to make a bar here. Let me just do a basic draw out of this. Again, don't copy along with this because it's not important, so I'll just call this testing. So I pretty much want to make a bar like this and a bar like this, and then I need to enable show transformation controls, and then I'm just going to rotate it like this and make an X. Of course, the things that we do will be a bit more complicated than that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my rectangular marquee tool, which has the shortcut of M if you like, and then I will change the style to a fixed size. With the fixed size, every time you click, it will always be whatever pixel by pixel width it is in here. Now we know that my image is 512 by 512, so I can do 512. But I want a little bit of padding on the side. I usually like about 15 to 20 padding, so I think I'm going to go all the way down to 490 and see how I like 490. I think that's close enough. We'll see how it is. Now, because this is a perfect square, I actually want a line, which means I'm first going to drop the height. So let me try 490 by 200. That's good. Maybe a little bit too blocky. I'm going to drop it down to 150. This is all by feel. If you're doing this for the first time, then I encourage you to use the exact numbers as I am, 490 by 150. If you've done this a few times, then you should be well on your way to correcting me on my ways. Okay, but now we have this outline of 490 pixels by 150 pixels. And we need to fill it with color. So I'm going to go to my Paint Bucket tool, which has the shortcut of G. And I am just going to fill it with a black color. And of course, all of the assets that I make will be ready for use in the Unity video game creation program. So if you are creating your assets for any other programs, I cannot exactly say yay or nay for those. In my experience, these will also work perfectly fine for the web, though, if you're going to toss these into your React website. Okay, but now we have one black bar. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to do image rotation, and then you can rotate it 90 degrees clockwise or 90 degrees counterclockwise. This will pretty much turn this to this if you don't know your degrees yet. Now I'm going to make another one of my boxes. I'm going to use the pink lines that you see. It's called Snap to Grid, and it's in the Photoshop settings somewhere. This is something that you can Google on your own fairly easily. Yes, I think I will also turn off my anti-alias and contiguous. Anti-alias is a bleed, so it will toss colors over when you paste it on. It's good for things like photo manipulation, but when it comes to dealing with pixels, anti-alias is the bane of your existence. And contiguous means that it will continue across lines, or it will not. So as you saw with contiguous on, and I click black here, it stops at the black line. Now if I turn contiguous off, it fills all of the spaces with the color that I clicked. This is the same for if I do red right here, and then I click a black. So anything that is red that it is touching will be filled with black, or anything of that exact hexadecimal color code, which is, like C2 1F 1F. There is also a tolerance that you can see. So within 32, I'm not sure what exact what exact formula they use, but 32 something. I find that sometimes I need to toss it all the way down to 1. Sometimes I need to toss it all the way up to 150 to select the colors I want. But that's beside the point. Okay, so now we've got a nice plus sign. If you want an addition sign, then you're here, congratulations. But we want a cross. like up here. So I'm going to remove my selection by pressing Control and D. Now I'm going to select the Magic Wand tool by pressing W or going over to this sidebar. If you do not have this toolbar, Google, of course, and there is a setting up here to select your bars. Somewhere. Google is your best friend when you don't know where something is. But this is a vanilla installation of Photoshop 2020, I believe. Maybe 2019. I'd have to look at my file. But anyways, it's a vanilla installation of Photoshop. As you can see, I'm still adding my preferences. Now, with my Magic Wand tool, I'm going to click anywhere on this black plus. If you click outside of the black plus, you'll see a little ant trail along the border of the image as well as the border of the plus. But we just want an ant trail along the border of the plus. Now we are going to create a little indent to add a nice black border to this white plus. So now I will select, modify, and contract. And contract is to pull in or squeeze, just like when your mothers have contractions, or the English contraction like don't, which don't use contractions. I hate contractions. Now, for the contract selection, we select how many pixels. Again, this is why it's great to use pixels and not inches, because many photo manipulation or photo editing softwares will base everything off of pixels. So if you want to do 10% of 5 inches, you would have to do a lot of math and remember your PPI, pixels per inch. However, I can see right now, I have 512 pixels, so I don't need to worry about any of that. But I do need to decide how far do I want to contract it. When I do this step, I will usually do this 5 times, 6 times, 10 times, 2 times even, if I'm, liking what I see, just to get a feel for my options. Now, this section right here is about 22. So let's try that. Let's try about 25. And I think that's nice. It's a good portion inside. It's a good border. Now, I want to fill the inside of the plus with white. So I will again access my paint bucket by typing the G key, but I now need to swap the colors here. So Photoshop, or at least the version I am using, allows you to keep 2 colors at once, a foreground color and a background color. You can swap between the 2 of them by clicking this button right here, the little 2 arrows, or you can also press the X key, and you can see if I hover over it long enough, there is a little X. Now I can just click there and I've got a nice white cross. The final thing to do is, let's just Control A to select everything, Control J to make a copy of it, and I will just call this plus. Now I want to create this as a PNG, so I will go to File, Export, and then I need to go to Quick Export as PNG. I find that most assets that I use prefer PNGs over JPEGs, JPGs, GIFs, and other sorts. If you do create an animated GIF, then you want to use Save for Web Legacy, where you can actually save a little GIF from Photoshop, but maybe I'll talk about that later. But now quick export as PNG. Now we still need to make that cross X. Now of course we do have two versions, so this will be cross X0. And from here on out it's very simple. I'm going to use my move tool, which is selected with the V key, and I'm going to make sure that I have show transformation controls selected. Now I'm going to touch this to open up this menu, and where it shows the angle, I'm going to double click to select everything. You can also just drag your mouse along it, and then I will type 45 to rotate this at a 45-degree angle. Then I will do something I should have done earlier, which is turn off the plus layer, which means it will hide it from view and I can no longer select it or manipulate it. But now we have the cross, and oh hey, look, this is a nice cross. It might be a little bit small for you, and in that case you can grab the edge. When you grab the edge, it should, keep the size of it too. But sometimes you will need to press the shift key. In this case, the shift key is actually allowing me to manipulate it however I want, and that's not something I want. And that's how you can resize it. I will say that this size is fine. And now I have just saved it in my files using the same naming system as over here. Now there is one final style of cross that I want to cover, which is the flat top cross that we see up here. So of course I'm going to go to G and then X, because I actually want to fill up this X again. And as you can see, we can see a bit of that bleeding happening when I use this. So the problem was, too far back. The problem was my magic wand tool has anti-alias selected, which means it's going to do that thing where it blurs the edges. We see a perfectly flat line, but when I paint it, we can still see the outline. This might be helpful if you want to do something like show an indent or something like that. Oh, but I hate it. So I'm going to select my magic wand tool with W, turn off anti-alias. And yes, now we can see that it has a bit of that blur right there. And to overcome this, you can of course use the marquee tool and shift select all of the pieces that you want. But something I find easier is to go to select, modify, and then expand, and I'm just going to expand it by 5 pixels. And there we go. Now, in this case, let me zoom out with Alt and then squeeze my things together. I believe if you have a mouse, it's scrolling back. Now, I believe when I use the Paint Bucket tool, it will still leave that mark. So what I will do is I will press B to select my pencil tool. You might have the brush tool selected, but I like the pencil tool because it deals with pixels easier. I'm going to go to a ridiculous size like 174, and then I'm just going to fill that in and everything will be pure black again. There we go, nice and clean. Now what I actually want to do is cut the top off of these. To cut the top off of them, I will pretty much be making a box from here on. And we can do some testing to see what exactly that would be, or you can just kind of drag this into place and decide where you want to make the cut. So I think that's good. Right at the top pixel. I'm going to zoom out to make sure it cuts perfectly, and I'll just press the delete key. The delete key will remove everything inside of my box here. Now I'm just going to drag the box down, and let me zoom in down here. Yes, and we want the box to be dragged down right there. And then delete. And now we've got a Fox X. Now I will select it again, and I am going to do the same contract as before. So select, modify, contract. I think I want to try 20 pixels this time. I like that. I'm going to do paint bucket and then fill it in. And now I've got a cross kind of like this. If this is too thick for you, then I recommend doing the plus again, but keeping these even skinnier. If you make them even skinnier, then you will have a bigger gap here. And I think that's what I'm going to do, and I accidentally destroyed my layer, which I should never do. To not destroy my layer, I'm going to select everything, select Ctrl J. With the layer selected, press Ctrl J. Okay. And then I'm going to close that so I don't destroy it. Now, like we saw, these are a little bit too fat. So we want to try again. So I'm just going to delete that and then real quickly run through the steps. We still have the 490 by 150. Let's try and drop this down to 100. And of course I'm going to place it in the middle, use my black to fill it up. Then I'm going to, this time I will just rotate it by 90. I have to click the commit transform to start doing other things. I will select my marquee tool again, and then I will, because I don't have contiguous selected, and then I will select everything again, marquee tool, rotate by 45, select yes, wand tool to select the cross, select, modify, contract by 20, still looks fine, fill it with white, and now try to put it into place. Delete. Oh, you should have said something. I need to cut it before I edit it. If you want to undo something, not all Photoshop versions have undo. I believe that's why I'm using the version that I have, because it does. But undo is typically Control and Z. And redo is typically Control and Y, but many things change that. So in this case it's Shift Control Z. So you can also go to Edit. Now I've selected it, so select, modify, contract, 20, paint bucket, place in the white, and as you can see here, my X is fairly small compared to the rest of the image. So I do want to increase the size. Now I have this little thing selected, which will not let me change the dimensions of this, which is exactly what I want to do. So I will fit it to my 512 by 512 box exactly, and I will press select. Of course, we don't want to actually do that, but I was applying the transforms. Now I've gone back into it, and I've made sure to turn this link on. This is what will maintain the aspect ratio. And I'm going to shrink it by, let's see, 512. Let's go to 490 again. There we go. Now I'm going to apply, and before I save it, I need to make sure it's in the middle. In this case, we don't see the pink lines that I like so much, but I can still feel it snapping into place. And this will be cross x1. Now I will save this file, so file, export, quick export as PNG, and I will save it into the folder of my choice on my local machine. Okay, so those were some fairly basic things. The next thing that I want to create will be a power button. This will be your traditional power button like you would see on a gateway computer or something like that, back when computers had the power button, or the Xbox. Now, as you know, a power button is a circle with a little bar at the top. So to create a circle, I of course am not going to try to select the pencil and then just, go around like that, because it is ugly and I do not have the steady hand to do that. Instead, we'll go to my handy dandy marquee tool, but this time I want to go to the elliptical marquee tool. With the elliptical marquee tool, it's like the rectangular, but you make an ellipses, or a circle if you want. Kind of like rectangle and square. Now again, 512 by 512, so style, fixed size, and let's try the handy dandy 490 by 490 again. And see how this fits. I think it's okay, but I want a little bit more padding because I want that bar at the top to stick up a little bit more. It's also best to draw things out. I do a lot of drawing and visualizing, but here, let's say power button icon. See if Google can't. Perfect. Exactly what I'm talking about. So I want a little bit more up top to create this. But based on this image here, it looks like they've got, very little margin, and they would go by that. But okay. So now I don't like the 490 by 490, so I'm going to drop it all the way down to 475. That's a nice number. I like doing things by 25s. Then I'm going to move it into place, and I'm going to consider, is that what I want? Now it may be what you want, but I want it a little bit smaller. And that's why I say I usually drag things around and do it 5-10 times, just because I want to make sure this is what I like. Now I am a programmer and not a graphics designer, so I of course do not trust my instincts most of the time, and I'm often told that my instincts are trash. Oh, crying on the inside. But okay, now we want to hollow out the middle. So, well, elliptic tool. We could do the contract, but the contract doesn't always work nicely. The first thing I want to do is just to make an outlined cube. To To make an outlined cube, I will go to my rectangular marquee tool, select the style to fixed size, and I'm going to move my face down. Now, I know that my size right now is 512 by 512, and I want my cube to have about 20 pixels of padding. So I will cut it down to 492. And the fixed size, as you will see soon, just gives us a fixed size. I think 20 is a bit big still. So let's just go with 475. I always like good numbers like that, you know, by 25, by 5, by 10, by 2s, not just like randomly. Okay. Oh, of course I need a layer. This will be a, gosh, there we go. This will be an outlined There we go, outlined cube. Okay, now I will paint it black, and I want to draw in about 20, 25-ish. So I'll do select, modify, contract, 20, looks good, paint bucket, white color, and paint it in. When you're using contract, I will say this later, but if your image is touching the edge, contract may not work in that area, or it may not contract it as you expect. It's a very weird thing. Just be careful. Usually happens to me when I do things like circles or something overflowing from the edge. But okay, that's an outlined cube. Very simple. You know, we'll be using this concept in just about everything else, as you can see below. Now, File, Export, Quick Export as PNG to save our new outlined cube. We are going to go one step farther and make an outlined circle. So my elliptical tool. Outlined circles and outlined cubes are perfect in Unity for your UI icons, especially when you make them sliced and add colors. All of my stuff is going to be black and white, but when you do it, I fully recommend using gradients, using highlights, shadows, making things look much nicer. Okay, but now for our sphere, we have about 512 by 512, so let's just make it 475 by 475, just like our cube. Toss that in there, follow the pink lines to put it in the dead center. Ooh, I don't have pink lines for some reason, but I will trust the clicks of the computer because you can't see it too well, but as I'm dragging it around, it will snap into place and it just looks like I'm not moving my mouse. Okay, now, as before, select, modify, contract by 20, paint it white, and boom. Let's name our layer as outlined circle, and finally File, Export, Quick Export as PNG, and save it to your favorite folder. We are making the power button. Right now we have our circle, and we want to reduce the size a little bit. Right now we're at 450 by 450. Let's see what 200 looks like. So I'll double click and tab over, select 200 by 200, and let's use the pink lines to get that in the center, and maybe, yeah, I think that's a good thickness for it. If anything, it's a little bit not thick enough. So this is 200 by 200. Let's just try 250 by 250. Yeah, that's a bit better. If anything, a bit too skinny. But we'll go with that. We'll go with that. So 250 by 250 circle, press delete. Now we want to cut out the space for the bar, which means we will right-click the elliptical marquee tool and select the rectangular marquee tool with the left mouse button. Now we need to change the width. I'm going to try a width of 100 and a height of 102. Okay, a height of 300. Yeah, that seems good. So we will delete this section out. Drop the height to 150 maybe, and drop the width to, from 100, try 75. Yeah, that looks good. So again, no pink line, but I can feel it. And actually, let's just do a drop down from here. So I can see from the two numbers next to my box that I am 25 pixels down. And I haven't moved left or right since I last moved it. And I like that area. Now I'm going to paint it black. Next, I'm going to select the wand tool, and using Shift and the left mouse button, I'm going to select the other part as well. Now I want to add the border like I have with all of my other icons. So with everything selected, I will say select, modify, contract by, let's try 15 this time. That seems a bit better. And there we have it, a power button. Oh my, what is in my eyeball? Just some morning gunk. Okay, with the contract and expand tool, you will see issues with it when your selection is touching the border. And the issue that I am referring to is your contraction won't contract and your expansion won't expand when it is touching the border. This can cause some very strange effects, and my solution to fixing that is to just manually contract it by 1 pixel using something like the marquee tool on normal, and then Alt and select. An Alt select would remove a selection. But okay, anything else that we want to add to the power button? I don't think so. So let's name this power, and I will now go File, Export, Quick Export as PNG, and I will save it in my preferred file. Now we are creating the settings gear. To do that, I'm going to select the rectangular marquee tool with a fixed size. I want it just about the length like we did with the plus. So we'll do 490, and I think 150 might be a good height. So we'll drag it into the very center using the pink bars, paint it black, and I find that if we were to just rotate it now, it would create lots of issues later. So instead we will do the image rotation and flip it by 90 degrees in any direction. It doesn't matter which direction. 90 degrees in one direction is the same as the other if the object is the same on both sides. Now we will create another one and put it there. And the next thing to do is to pretty much duplicate this. So Control C, Control V, Control C to copy, Control V to paste, and before all of that, Control A to select also. Control A, Control C, Control V. Now I've got layer 1 selected, the new layer that I made with Control V or paste. And I am clicking the rotate, and I am telling it to rotate 45 degrees. I want my interpolation to be nearest neighbor. This will keep everything nice and crisp. If you try it with bicubic, bilinear, then it can create a little fuzziness, the bleeding of edges. And there you have it, the red hot chili pepper symbol. Oh, that's not what we were making, my bad. Let me move my, moved it down anyways. Okay, perfect. I do need to rotate my image back. Oh, other direction. Image rotation counterclockwise. Okay, there. Now all of my images over here are in the correct orientation. Okay, now that we have the red hot chili peppers symbol, we can cut out the middle. So I'm going to select the elliptical marquee tool, 250 by 250. What does that look like? I think that's good for the outer shell, but let's try 200 because that looks a little bit big. I like that better. So 200 by 200, move it to the very center and click delete. Now we'll drop it by, oh, what do you say, 50? Okay, 150 by 150. Drag that to the absolute center, and we will fill that up. You will see why later. Now I will select W and select this with Shift left click using my magic wand. Then I'm going to select Modify Contract, and we will try 20 pixels. Yes, I like that. Now G to select paint bucket, X to switch to white. Make sure contiguous is off so it colors all black items within the ant lines or ant tracks. And boom. Now we have our settings gear. How very easy. And it looks just like the gears that we saw over here. Yeah. If anything, these have, a little dip here, maybe a little smoothness. And to do that, you would just edit it yourself. And we're not going to do that. Another thing you can do is create the line and then paint one and then copy and paste that using rotations. But okay, now File, Export, Quick Export as PNG, and I will save it in my preferred folder. Next thing that I want to create is a magnifying glass for a search. So I will call this a search or magnifying glass. Now, of course, go to Google just to see what the typical icon looks like for search, and oh, hey, this looks familiar. I think I want to try and go with something like this, actually. I like the look of this. We can even try to give it a rounded bottom like this. Okay, so that's what we'll do. We'll do a fusion of this with the rounded bottom. So let's get started. The first thing we want is we want our circle. So rectangular marquee tool, 150 by 150 is a little bit, not even a little bit, it is way too small. So I'm going to go all the way up to 300. Let's try to double the size. How ridiculous is this? A bit too ridiculous, but 250 might be good. Let's try 250. That seems good. Now I've dragged it to the very top center, and I'm going to drag it down 6 pixels? No, 15. We'll drag it down 15. G to select paint bucket, X to switch to black, and I paint it black. Now marquee tool again, but this time I want the rectangular marquee tool. And let's try a width of 75, height of, just go with 300, see what that looks like. And I think I want this even skinnier. Let's try 50. Okay, now I'm going to move it. Actually, this isn't the one that we need moved up. Did my circular marquee tool have anti-alias? Golly, I hate anti-alias. I will say it again and again and again. It is only good for, like changing something on someone's face, falsifying images. But for creating detailed images, for creating icons that need to be pixel perfect, it is your grand enemy. Okay. Now, one last thing. Not one last thing, a few more things. We want to increase the size of this. Let's just go with 75. I'm going to reduce the height to 200. Let's see, is this thick enough? I'd say that's thick enough, yeah. And let me fill that in with black. And bada boom, we've got that little magnifying. You can stop here, but I am going to go a step further. So looking at this, we have a width of 75, which means on our elliptical marquee tool, we want a new circle, which is 75 by 75. Yes, and it helps us connect it right to the bottom there. Next, I'm going to go back to my handy dandy rectangular marquee tool, and I'm going to go from styled to normal, and I'm going to Control X and Control V, move it back down into place, and now I want to move it up 15 pixels. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I could also probably drag it and it would be the same, but meh. Now I will right, this is something we haven't done yet, so over the little thing that I just pasted, I will move away from this, because if I right click on the text or the image, I may get different options. So over on some of the blank area over here, I will right click, and then I will select, which is being blocked. So let's see if we can undo that. Okay. Let me move my face over. Now right click and merge down. Merge down will move it down one layer. Merge visible will merge all of the things visible. And flatten image would remove all of the other images. So I don't want to merge, well, I could use merge visible, that's what ran before, but I will just use merge down. Now we've got a little magnifying glass. However, you might have noticed that the middle here is missing. So to do that, we will go over here, elliptical marquee tool. Let's see, no, let's try 150 by 150. I think this is 250, isn't it? So you can try 200. Again, this is all, to your feeling. Ooh. Okay. Now, this might have been good to do when we had just the circle, but we don't now, so we'll do it this way, and I'm going to paint it white. Instead, you could also delete it, have it empty. No, we've got everything painted white, so we'll go with that. We could also do it with the handle. If I were to do it with the handle, what I would do is I would select everything, and then I would grab my rectangular marquee tool, style normal. Holding down Shift, I would select everything, or at least that bar. Now let me try to zoom out. Now I need to select the rest of the circle using Shift Select. Finally, I will do Select Inverse. This reverses your selection. So if you have everything outside of the hand selected, and you select Inverse, it selects just the hand. Now, of course, select Modify Contract by 15, and there we go. Yeah, it fits. Fits better with the rest of the icons that we have. So I'll keep it that way. You can remove it if you don't like it. Finally, File, Export, Quick Export as PNG, and I will save it to my preferred folder. Okay, so now we want to create a sunburst effect for whatever you want a sunburst icon for. This will kind of be an accumulation of everything that we've done so far. However, it also has lots of trigonometry and geometry and nasty things to it with dividing by pi and whatnot, and I am not able to do stuff like that. Or at least not willing after graduating. But we can do everything by eyes and get to a satisfactory answer. May not be perfectly mathematical, but we don't need to be perfectly mathematical. Okay, so now let's start with our initial shape, which will be 512 by 512. Because a 512 by 512 circle fits perfectly within a 512 by 512 cube. Next, we want to select our circle, and we want to cut out 3 circles per side from our circle. And I think we can try from 512 about 160. I believe I did this before on 256 by 256 using an 80 size sphere. So I think if you do the 256 by 80, 512 by 160 calculation, so what would that be? It would be 256, so a 132, no, 120, 128, that's what it is. Yeah, so if you do like the 128 by 40, then it should be fine. Now, I will also want to put this kind of right in the center, I believe, and we'll cut that out. Now, from here, I could do every side, and I think I will just for simplicity's sake. If you have like 100 of these to do, then instead of doing it like this, where I only have 12-ish, you can just do, one slice like this, which is 1, 2, 3, 4 cuts, and then copy and paste everything else in. Now there is a little trick that I have where we create a new layer. Go to our marquee tool, and I'm actually going to select some fun red. Drag it into place, paint it, press D to turn it back to black and white. Go back to my sunburst layer so I don't edit that nice Japanese flag. And let's see about moving it 30 degrees. That looks like it might be fine. And again, this is graphic design, and as all of my art teachers have ever told me, even though your stuff looks horrible, it's still up to you to judge it. So, as long as you think it looks good, nothing else matters. Yeah, 30 looks like the perfect number. Wonderful. Okay, we can hide that sunburst. And yes, it looks like a very weird religious cross right now. But once we circumcise the edges, I wonder if that word can be used in this meaning. Now we've got our little sunburst. Looks like it's straight out of comic book. I will delete that red layer since it's not needed anymore. And I think I want to increase the size of this a bit, just because everything else is touching the side. So now I'm flat at the bottom, flat at the top. I will move it. I will actually increase the size of it to fit that and fit there. Finally, I will say yes, and then I will drag this in from 512 to 497. And same here. I will need to move my face first. Well, I moved up very fast. It is lucky that I am not lightheaded. Okay. So this is 498 minus about 15 would be 473-ish. Gosh, me and math. How did I pass calculus? Oh, just don't tell my... Yeah, okay. Final thing to do is just drag it around, make sure it's dead center. I like that padding. Who knows if it's perfect? I sure don't. But okay. The final thing we want in the sunburst is to give it the sunburst. So of course, or give it our typical border. So of course, select, modify, contract. This time we can do 20. And then paint it white, and boom, a sunburst. We can make it multi-layered now. You can keep it as it is. I'm going to keep it as it is. Kind of looks like a comic book sunburst. I like that. Final thing, file, export, quick export as PNG. And yes, you have to do this with everyone. You can set the quick export as PNG to a shortcut, but it does not come as a shortcut by default. If you want to know how to do it as a shortcut, then you can look at my other videos, which I will upload later, because I do love my quick export as PNG shortcut. You can also Google it and spend about a day trying to figure it out yourself. But okay, let's save it. So, new layer. I don't know, what would this be? Just arrows? Yeah, you can pretty much cut off an edge and get an arrow from this. Okay, the first things first, our marquee tool. We want the rectangular marquee tool, fixed size. Let's try 300 by 300. Bit big. 250 by 250, we'll try this one. Okay, might be big, we'll go with it, see what happens. And done, 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 paint it black. Next, we actually want to rotate it 45 degrees. using the nearest neighbor interpolation to save us from getting fuzziness. I'll move it all the way over here, select my marquee tool again, and this time I want, okay, and you can see that purple line right there. That means we're in the center. Yes, now we can zoom in. Using Alt, you can zoom in to see that, yes, we are there, and I'll just click Delete. And there we are. We've got a triangle. I will now select the triangle using my magic wand tool, or W, and then I will move it over using my move tool, or V. And I'm going to move it 15 pixels to the other direction. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Yeah, that's fine. Finally, we have a few things that we can do. So this will be an arrow, and later on we'll make a double-sided arrow. Okay, I like that. Now our marquee tool again. This time we want a fixed size. Width of 250, sure, but let's do a height of 125. Let's do half of it. Yes, maybe make the width 300 so we can take on an even bigger area. Try to get it to go right into the middle. I'm not seeing my purple line that I love so much. Oh, but I am still clicking into place. Okay, looks like my width wasn't wide enough, but I can just do it twice. Now we've got an arrow. I'll use my magic wand tool to select the whole arrow, then image, no, select, modify, contract, 20, GX, left click, and boom, we have an arrow. And then File, Export, quick export as. Now we have one arrow. We want to make a second, we want to make a double-headed arrow. And whenever you use this in most things, whether it's your CSS on your website or your Unity or Unreal Engine game, even if you toss it into something like RPG Maker, you should be able to set the rotation value. And if not, if you want an arrow up, an arrow right, arrow down, all that stuff, then you can just do image rotation 90 degrees clockwise, save it again, image rotation 90 degrees clockwise, save it again, and there you have your 4 different directions of arrows. Now let's get a dual-headed arrow. Dual head arrow. And this will pretty much just be like a Pisces arrow, you know, facing in one direction and then another. So go over here. Now, image rotation. I want to flip the canvas horizontal. So it would pretty much like turn this to this. Like take the left side, put it on the right. But you'll see. There we go. And I will paste it again. And now I need to start cutting parts of my arrow off. So I will go to normal with my rectangular marquee tool. I will select, look for that pink line. I will go to my arrow to the left and I will okay. I'm having some issues, which is odd. Look for the click. I have something wrong. This should not be blue. I don't think it's registering that I'm clicking delete on this and not the style. Yes. I had that before. I don't know why. Oh, I need to delete it from layer 1. That is my bad. Now go to the dual head arrow, just drag it over and delete there. And boom, now we have a dual head arrow. We do have one last thing. We want to right click and then click merge down, which you can't see because my face is in the way, so I'll put my face over here. Now right click and then merge down. And of course we might need to rename it again, so dual head arrow. Okay. And if you want to do the same thing but make a four-headed arrow, they do have that symbol too. Follow the same concepts. You'd want this skinnier, so these can be longer, because if you do it now there will be a ton of overlapping. But it's following the same concept. I don't think we'll cover that one though, because I don't have use for it right now. But finally, file export, quick export as PNG and save it to your favorite folder. Okay, the same concept with the four-headed arrow. The dual-headed arrow follows with the tri-headed arrow. You would just rotate it by about, you would rotate the single arrow by about 33%. And that would, you know, put you right over here. I believe that's like 33%. Anyways, you know, just use your best math. Got quite a bit done. I think the next in the video would show the plus and then the cross. Okay. Okay, the next thing I want to show you is kind of a more fun thing than what we've done before. All of our stuff is very serious icon-y image things, but it was Halloween last month or so, so let's make a skull. For the skull, let's go to our elliptical marquee tool with a fixed size anti-alias off, of course. And let's set the width to, oh, what do you say, 300 by 300. It does not matter too much as long as it tickles your Charlies or whatever you want to say. I'll give it a 15 padding from the top. I will paint it black. Finally, I will go to my, or next, I will go to my rectangular marquee tool. Fixed size. Let's cut that down. Try 200 by 200. Yeah. I saw a purple line. There wasn't much of a click. Oh. There we go. Whew, that was a hard one to grab. Okay. And then I'm going to paint it black. And we've got the basic shape of the skull down. Next, we want the elliptical marquee tool. If this was 300 by 300, let's do 100 by 100. That looks good for an eye. Okay, tossed it in about the center. Yeah, maybe even drop it down to about here. And then let's move it over. Okay, that seems good. Paint it white. Go back to our marquee tool. I'm actually going to cut this in half and paste it over to the other side. So you don't need to do both right now. Now we need a nostril. Let's put it at 50-50, half the size of our eyeball. God, that still looks like a giant nostril. Let's go down to 20 by 20. Yeah, that's more modest. Oh, yeah. And then move it over. Sure, he'll have his nostril 15 pixels away. I'm also not a face designer. Okay, now we need the pearly white. So we'll do our rectangular marquee tool. If the height was 200, that's a bit high. Let's go with 150. The width was 200. Gosh, what is 200 divided by, I don't know, some odd number? It cannot go by an odd number, but let's try 30. Seems to be good. I want my teeth to be much smaller though. Let's try 100. That seems better. Okay. Now 15 over 15, paint it white. Okay, now let's drag it over. Sure, we'll do it by 10. Oh no, now because of snapping, it's messing with me. Okay, so because of snapping, I'm just going to Control Paste and then manually move this over using the arrow key. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And let's actually just find the center there. Yeah, let's do that. Paint this black again. And even paint this, of course, with contiguous turned off for once. Okay, so this is a tooth in the dead center. Yeah, let's try 10. I think we did 10 before and didn't quite like the outcome, but we'll see. Yeah, that's good. Okay. Now, rectangular marquee tool, normal style. Find the center. There it is. Control C. Image, rotation, flip canvas, horizontal. Hey, this kind of looks like a skull looking this way. If you move the nostril over, oh, there you go. I do not see why it keeps sticking on normal. Oh my, I've never had that issue before. But today, every time I try to use my keys, there we we just need to drag it into place. Select all 3 layers and right-click on any one of them and move my face over again. Okay, right-click on them and click Merge Layers. And there you have it, a little skull. Maybe the nostrils are a bit too big, the eyes are a bit too close together, but still a pretty boy. So, File, Export, Quick Export as PNG. Okay, we've covered many things in this little how-to. So far, we've created pluses, powers, setting gears, search magnifying glasses, crosses, sunbursts, outlined cubes, arrows, skulls. The final thing I want to talk about is kind of putting all of this together to make a logo. So I recently created a logo, and since this is based off of the things that I did for my Match 3 game, I think I will recreate my Match 3 game logo, and you can kind of take it and use the same ideas to make your own logo. Okay, so first, fixed size. We like 490, but let's do 475 by 475. That's another one that we like. Find the center. No pink lines, but no layer selected also. Okay. So let's call this a logo. We'll rename this one to skull as well. Okay, now we've got our logo. Paint it black. And as you may have guessed, select, and we want to contract it by 20. I'd say that's a bit thin. Let's go with something a bit more meaty this time. Oh, this is expand. It's not what we want. Modify. Contract. Let's try 50. I think that's good. A bit meatier for what we want. And I'm just going to delete it because this time, instead of having the insides being white, I want the insides to be transparent. Finally, let's do a width of 512 because I want to expand the entire width. But let's make the height, I don't know, 150. Try 150. Yeah, that seems good. Now I've got that little, fancy box. Hey, if I actually take this and I rotate it, why does it keep getting stuck on normal? I don't understand. Gosh, I've never had that. Okay, but anyways, I'll rotate it 90 degrees. Now it kind of looks like the programming array. Or not finally, but next, let's go to text. My Photoshop comes with many different texts. Of course, I like a good thick sans serif text. But I still want it to be a little bit playful too, maybe a show card gothic. Okay, just so I'm not here all day long, and I have spent days choosing a font. I think I want it to be about, we'll try a 100-point font. We will put it in the middle. 100-point font is way too big. Okay. Drop it down to 30-point font. Okay, that's a bit better. And I'm going to call it NICHATHANGANING as my not exactly a company yet name. Try dropping it down to 12 point, that's a bit small. 16 point, maybe. 18 point, okay. But now let's click off of it, press V, drag it in the center, and now double click it. Okay, and we can see that that's too big. 17, 16, 15, 14 seems to be the lucky number. And there we go, a nice little logo. I can move my face over. Now with these extra layers, they are a bit more complicated to deal with. Photoshop doesn't let you deal with them like you should, but you can just go to Merge Visible. And there we go, a nice little logo using the ideas that we've talked about. So I hope you liked these courses. If there are any other icon designs that you would like to see made, let me know in the comment section. If there are any other tutorials that you would like, I would love to hear your opinion, and maybe I can get around to it when I have time. But also remember to save your Photoshop file too. Just do save as and then save it with all of your other images, because when you want to edit one of your images, this will make it much easier because now you have the different layers. You might not exactly keep the history depending on your Photoshop version, but yeah, thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the comments.